have such a strong organizational mind, and you touched on this really quickly. What logistical roadblocks did you encounter when you were starting your business, and how did you address them? Because you obviously are good at working systems out of tenacity, I have to say. What did you do with your business that actually carried the same spirit?
Well, the funny thing is, my husband and he retired before I did. He was already retired when I made it to my retirement date. And we both were people that liked working with our hands. He had grown up with his father teaching him how to do things. And me, I was just I was the only girl in high school that was in woodshop. I was just one of those kind of people. I would tackle anything. My grandmother had taught me how to sew. So when I moved into my first apartment, I made my curtains, I made my bedspread. I was just very hands on. Well, my husband had started working with another Army veteran, and they were doing kind of home improvement projects, building decks and fences and things of that. And he loved it, absolutely enjoyed it. And he was already a person that had tools, and that was his weakness, was tools. He was always buying the next new tool and gadget. And, me, I'm right beside him at the store, like, oh, wow, look at this tool. Look what this does. So we were kind of into that thing together. And I remember one day, and it was during that first 2-year period, he came home and he says, look, get up off the sofa, come on and go up with me out on this job. And I said, okay. So I initially kind of just started going with him just to help him with stuff because he was like, you can help me, you can hand me a tool, you can do this. But we really got into it and started enjoying it. And so we finally decided, you know what? Why don't we just go ahead and do our own business? Because the Army guy that he was working with, they kind of had some issues because my husband had a more methodical mind than this gentleman did. He was good at doing the work, but he wasn't good at business. And so for both of us, we had both been in positions in the military where it was our job to manage other people and resources and just take care of things. At one point, part of my job was working with the 5-year defense plan for the military. So, numbers and equipment and all of those things were part of things that I had just learned over the years. So, we got started primarily just with things that he already had equipment and tools and all of that kind of stuff. And he had a trailer because he had also been a DJ. So he had a trailer that we used to hook up to the back of the van. And eventually one day he just outfitted it for tools. So we kind of, you know, st- created this huge rolling toolbox, and we decided to get a business license, and we decided we were going to start our own business. And we sat down and talked about what we wanted the name of it to be, and that's where TTC Enterprises was born. And we kind of just went out there and started doing what we love doing. And I remember back then, now this is dating myself, we were in the yellow pages.
I
And we advertised it as a husband and wife team, handyman service. And when we started, here where we live, we were only one of two handyman services on the entire peninsula. And so it was interesting because we would get a phone call and people would tell us, well, we hired you because you said husband and wife team, and we couldn't believe a husband and wife were working together. So, that's how we got started with the business. And now we didn't have any formal business training. Um, I had not really taken courses specifically in business. And as my husband would say, I'm the school person. He's not. He just has a mindset and he's a very critical thinker. So, and he always says I test him and I challenge him because I'll say, you know what, babe, I need something that, holds this and it does this, and I want it to do this so I can put it over here so it can do such and such. And he'll look at me and he goes, you are really testing me. But he says, give me a minute. And he'd walk away, create it, and come back and go, here, will this work? Perfect. Or I could say, well, can you modify this? He's just very creative, very, very creative. So we just took all of our skills and kind of put it together. And I had design side of things, which during my military career, never was thinking about being a designer. That was just never on my purview. But I had done many things in the military with squadron reorganizations, where either part of my jobs, one of my jobs as a program manager was new facilities that went in. I had to manage and make sure all of the electrical systems and the plumbing systems. And that was back when we got started with people actually having computers on their desk and telephones. Because at one point, everybody didn't have that. You know, maybe your main person had that, but everybody in the unit didn't have that. So that was part of my job in the beginning. I was on the ground floor of fiber optics. So I was learning about blueprints and plans and all of that stuff back then, never realizing how I would use that in the future.
That is incredible because I was trying to understand here how you had moved from the handyman services of husband and wife, which is such a fascinating concept, by the way, in with your trailer that used to be a DJ trailer. And how did you make the leap from actually doing handyman work, mild or light construction work, boom, into design? I was trying to figure out what in your history would lead you down to that.
Yes. So there was just so many things that I had already learned in the military service. And then as we got started with the handyman service, most of our customers, and we still have some of those customers even now, they call us and go like, "Are you guys still in business?" Yes, we are. And they started asking us to do things that we hadn't done before. And when I say we have a plethora of books, I mean, from everything from carpentry to plumbing to electrical to you name it, we studied. And we would just learn how to, if we didn't already know how to do it, we learned how to do it. And over time, as we got into that, customers started asking us, well, I want to remodel my bathroom. And me and my husband would look at each other like, well, we've never really done that before. And they're like, you know what? You guys are just so creative. We trust you. Rip my bathroom out and start over. And it was like, are you serious right now? But when it was like, okay, we're game. And that's really how we got started. Just hands on. We just dove into it. It was stuff we loved to do, so we did it anyway. And as we got into that process, somebody told me one day, and they said, you're eligible for the post 9/11 GI Bill. And I was like, I am? And I'm like, yeah, you were in during Desert Storm, so you're eligible. Because I was one of those people that walked away and really didn't have any education benefits. So I applied for it, found out that, yep, I was eligible, and there was funding available for me to go back to school. So at that point, I said, babe, guess what? I'm going to apply for interior design school. And he said, okay. So I did. I applied. I started out at the Art Institute in Virginia Beach initially. And their program, there was a lot of things I already knew and I understood. And I already had, a bachelor's degree and a couple of associate's degrees. And so they were trying to like get me to go back and take all these little knit nanny courses, just to get my money. And I was like, wait, I don't need all that stuff. I need the design stuff. I'm not wasting my time going back. And I was like, and then they weren't offering the courses I needed. So then finally I applied for VCU. I figured the program wasn't taking me in the direction that I really wanted to go. Plus, it was for another bachelor's degree, which I already had one of those. So I finally decided to apply for the master's program at VCU for interior design, and I got in.
And Miss Tony, for our audience members, what is VCU?
Virginia Commonwealth University.
There you go.
And they were number 4 in the country at that time for interior design. So as it turns out, I had some challenges because the school was a little upset that I left their program. And unfortunately, we started out with a class of about 14. And I had gone to the director of the school a couple of times asking her about issues with getting some of the core classes we needed. And at the time, they said their focus was on bringing in new students. And I said, oh, okay. So, at the end of like that first year, and I was like, okay, I won't be coming back here next year. But I said nothing to anybody. all my classmates were asking me, it was like, so what classes are you taking next semester? And I was like, oh, I really hadn't decided. And so when it finally hit that point, and it was like, you're not coming back, are you? And I was like, well, we had a class of 14, 11 people walked with me. It wasn't intentional, but they were also not truly satisfied with the program and how it was going at that time. So I had already applied at VCU, so the school wouldn't release my transcripts on time. So I actually couldn't get in that next year. But during that time frame, I already had a real estate license. So I focused on my real estate at the time because what was also key and critical was knowing the values of properties and understanding that when somebody wanted to do a renovation project, what made sense? You know, we can always design for someone and meet all of their personal desires. But I have conversations with my customers and I discuss with them. Now, is this going to be your final home? Or do you think you might sell and you might move on? Well, let's readdress how we're going to do this process, what changes you're going to make. We want to increase the value of your home, but not turn it into something that you couldn't sell later. So all of those things, start coming into play. And so I worked on my real estate license for the next year, but I am a perfectionist. I didn't sell a lot of properties during that year because I was just really focused on learning about real estate. So, while I was building a database and learning about, the skill of real estate and about properties and how to research things, and now what I knew in the home improvement business already, applying those principles and those things to what brings value to a home. And kitchens and bathrooms sell. At the end of the day, you walk into a house, the rest of the house cannot be all that great. But if you've got an amazing kitchen, most people, that's all they see. And they're excited. They'll buy a house for kitchen all day. So, just, and it's crazy, but it's the reality of how people think. But, so I got into VCU, and that next year, I just jumped into a master's program. And they told us in that first 2 weeks, they said, so say goodbye to your families because for the next 2 years, you will not be available. And they were not kidding. They were not kidding. I was the oldest person in my class. I was kind of like the mom of the class, but that was okay. I drove back and forth between Richmond and, we lived in Yorktown, Virginia at the time. So I drove back and forth every week and I dove into the program full force because it was a daytime program. Interior design was not a program that you could take through night school. It was a physical in-person program.